Hello and welcome to Cover, our semi-regular review of sporting books where I give you my opinion of what's out there on the bookshelves at the moment. If you've got a book you'd like us to review, indeed if you'd just like to respond to any of the things that I've been saying on Cover over the weeks, then we'd love to hear from you. There's the email address, sean.everett@supersport.com. Let's move right along to today's book, and here it is, Lloyd Bernard, Miracle Men, How Rassie's Springboks Won the World Cup. Published by Jonathan Ball, 275 Rand in paperback, and it is also available as an ebook. Lloyd Bernard is the editor of Sport24, very important online presence. It's his first book. It's also the first book to come out with specifically the 2019 World Cup win as a theme, although I do happen to know that there are several more in the pipeline, and it does appear as if the publishing industry, now that we're down at level 1, is starting to come out of hibernation. Well, in a nutshell, Miracle Men tells the story of how Springbok rugby fell about as low as it has ever been, and the way that Rassie Erasmus came on board and turned things around. From the dark days of the 57-0 defeat by the All Blacks and losing to Italy for the first time, we travel with the Boks on the gradual road to recovery and the ultimate reward of the third World Cup win. There's coverage of the remarkable bus tour of the country undertaken by the newly crowned champions, and interestingly, this comes at the beginning of the book and not at the end. Well, the reason for this, I think, is twofold. Firstly, Lloyd was on the bus with the Boks for parts of that journey, and clearly that's where the inspiration for writing the book came from. And secondly, it's an attempt to give the book a stronger start than would have been the case if things were done chronologically, by which I mean the troubled 2 seasons endured by the Boks under the coaching of Alistair Coetzee. The facts speak for themselves. Under Coetzee in 2016 and 17, the Boks played 25 games, won 11, lost 12, and drew 2. This period is dealt with in Chapter 2 and following the triumphal bus tour, and I can imagine a few people not wishing to read past the Coetzee years had it been Chapter 1. Well, understandably, the author feels the need to cover the onboarding of Rassie in exhaustive detail. My real problem with this book is that it gets in the way of what surely should be the core of the book, World Cup glory. In fact, we're almost 150 pages in before the Boks play their opening match. And then, rather surprisingly, the defeat by the All Blacks in Yokohama takes up less than 1 page of description. Far more time and space is given to the way that the Boks cope with the French referee Jerome Garcet, who ended up controlling 3 of their games, including the final. And it's a clever psychological analysis that's been picked up by newspapers in England and New Zealand, with journalists trying to and failing, I think, to make a case for the Boks cheating at the World Cup. It's undeniably fascinating stuff. The backroom boys worked out that Garcet was vulnerable to flattery about his level of fitness, but uncomfortable when being looked down upon from the height of your average rugby forward. To deal with that, the Boks were told to compliment Garcet on the way that he was able to stay up with the pace of the game. And when getting one-on-one with him, they were told to either put their hands on their knees or to pretend to be tying a shoelace so that the referee was looking down at them rather than vice versa. But my feeling is that this aspect of the book is highlighted because it's a little deficient elsewhere. The biggest example of this is the presence or otherwise of Rassie Erasmus. Now, given that Rassie appears in the full title of the book, I would have expected a lot more from the man himself. Now, I understand there were problems behind the scenes and that Rassie was only really made available to the author right on deadline, and I know exactly how that feels. Now, Rassie becomes a far more tangible presence in the final chapters when the author can use his one-on-one quotes, but for the bulk of the book, he's viewed through the prism of other people's opinions or from press conferences. Now, to put this into perspective, the book is at its very best when dealing with people who've given their time and thoughts to Lloyd. Forwards coach Matthew Proudfoot is uniformly excellent in giving insight, as is fly half Elton Jantjies, whose cerebral offerings might come as a shock to those who believe that he is merely what is euphemistically referred to as an instinctive player. Schalk Brits, Francois Lowe, and Sways de Brain all make fine contributions to the text, and I should also mention two separate sections of well-chosen photographs. The book finishes strongly with the kind of detail about how the Boks celebrated and what the win means in a broader context, and at the end there's also a useful compendium of the squad and detailed results from the World Cup. Well, many industries have emerged battered and worn from lockdown, and publishers now have that awful quandary about volumes. How many to print? How much to spend on marketing? Will people ever get back to browsing bookshops the way that they used to? Miraclemen is in a good position to do well, simply because it is the first. So let's talk about a score. Well, I felt that the book took rather too long with the build-up. There was quite a bit of repetition. Nevertheless, it's an important book because it deals with some of the greatest moments ever in South African sport. And so I give it a very worthy 5.5 out of 10. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. And if you ever find yourself in the position of wanting to write a book yourself, please remember the wise words of the great Raymond Chandler, who said, "Writing is easy. All you do is stare at a blank sheet of paper until your forehead starts to bleed."